Here, this time bringing you my first impressions for Black Myth Wukong, an action game I've been looking forward to for some time that just launched yesterday from the time of this video. Though I did not get a review key for this one, so I had to wait until launch, which is what we're doing here now. I still plan on doing the 100% for this and jumping into it and everything, obviously. And thus far, I can safely say it's been a lot of fun, to be honest. Now, on a technical level, I had heard some complaints about bugs and things, but personally I haven't really experienced much. The game crashed a couple of times when I went to get the game started, but once I actually got into the game, it was fine from there, which was a bit of a weird coincidence. But obviously, I might encounter more as I get farther in, but here at the beginning at least, it seems to be pretty smooth. Now, I have to imagine on that front this will probably run pretty terribly on the Steam Deck, just judging by the graphics of the thing. And speaking of graphics, first impressions wise, this game is gorgeous, hard to say otherwise. Visually, it is a very impressive game, but obviously that has little to do with mechanics. Now that said, difficulty-wise, there's only the one, but this is an action RPG, and while I can appreciate people's willingness to decide everything as a Souls-like these days, I would not consider this game a Souls-like, frankly, outside of some very minor mechanical things. Now, story-wise, if you're unaware, this game is rooted in Chinese mythology. Specifically, it's kind of inspired by the novel Journey to the West. At the beginning of the game, we see Sun Wukong fighting against the Court of Celestials as they attempt to bring him to heel, and at the last minute his powers fail him, and he goes plummeting to Earth. That section serves as a sort of basic tutorial for the game, and afterwards we see that this was actually a framing device. An older monkey was explaining to the rest of his people that the legend goes that if they can bring 6 artifacts back to this site, he might just return. Which is where our character, the Destined One, comes in. We set off on this journey. Now, best I can tell, the game takes place across several different chapters that act, of course, as a narrative device, but also each chapter is an individual explorable area, and then once that chapter ends, you get teleported into the next one, with there being secrets and things to find along the way. In fact, one of them, at least in the first area, I found by ringing 3 bells, which unlocked a secret teleport to a boss fight, and then beating that boss unlocked a bunch of craftable gear for me. So each of these individual chapters are not wholly linear, and there is some exploration involved in each of them, it would seem. But obviously the highlight of the show really is combat itself, and there's a whole host of customizable options here, starting with our level and sparks. So as we level our character up, we earn experience by defeating enemies, of course, and everything, and this levels us up, which gives us sparks. We can also find them in a couple of other areas, like meditation spots, and we spend these sparks on all sorts of different things to upgrade our character. This can be stuff like base health and stamina upgrades, or more specific stuff like unlocking combos or moves we can use in combat, such as improving some of the spells we get along the way. Now, the spells are both upgraded this way, but they're also acquired via normal story progression. So the very first one you'll get is an immobilize spell that stops enemies in their place, which has so far proven extremely effective, especially with a few upgrades that cause enemies to take more damage while they're in that state. But of course, casting spells requires mana, which does not seem to recharge. I don't know if there's a way to cause it to, but so far, no. And while I thought the spells might be enough, they take it a few steps farther. In fact, once you beat a couple of side bosses, you get access to transformations. These are characters you can fully transform into that come with their own benefits and combat styles and usefulness in each individual situation. Now, in order to use these, you have to fill up a gauge, and then you transform into that particular creature, which has its own health bar and combos and whatnot, which can be useful to give your main character a sort of reprieve health-wise while you keep chipping away at any individual enemy. However, there are still other forms of this via spirits. So certain enemies will drop a spirit that you can activate to use their sort of signature ability. So the first one you get is from a little mini-boss and transforms you into him momentarily to use his poison ability from snakes that spit venom at your enemies and cause damage at the same time. And then another thing I found actually dropped off that secret boss I encountered, which was a vessel. So this vessel is like an item you could activate that had a really serious effect. In the first area, it was a huge immunity to burning, which was very effective against the last boss for that area, which I would obviously assume was intentional. And activating activating all of those things at the opportune moment allows you to pull off some really crazy combos, even just in the beginning area, and I have to imagine that just gets better and more interesting as the game progresses, at least hopefully, mind you. But there are other items as well. For instance, we have our flask, which we have so many uses of between individual rests, which is like the one souls mechanic this game really has. We can upgrade the type of drink that's in those. We can also augment it with soaks that they call them. And then there's armor, weapons, and curios. So curios are just items like accessories you can find and equip that give you little bonuses. And then armor seems to become available in sets. Like as you defeat certain bosses, you'll get an armor set based on that you can then craft from the individual shrines. Now, I've noticed with these, at least so far, that there seems to be a very linear progression to those, but each of them does come with like a set bonus if you're wearing all the pieces. And over the course of the game, I'd be very curious to know if that's just like purely linear progression or if those bonuses are actually meaningful, at least enough to offset just the sheer like defense bonus you get from the better stuff. And then there's weapons. Certain items drop off of bosses that allows you to upgrade your staff, and I don't know if there's going to be more available later, but so far it's just been upgrading the one staff you start with into better versions of itself, and seeing how I have not seen any footage at all that sees us using anything besides that staff as would fit the setting, I would say. I'm not really expecting any. But all of that stuff combines to make a very, I would say, versatile combat system that lets you really lean into whatever aspect of this you want, which for me so far has been that immobilize spell and then dodge and light attacks, allowing me to really capitalize on openings and then of course making them myself by immobilizing the enemy. But there's clearly other ways you could do it. You have your standard light and heavy attack. The game does seem to focus very heavily on dodge specifically, and if you do it perfectly, you even leave behind a little decoy, and the last upgrade for that dodge seems to be causing those perfect decoys to actually explode and cause damage as you leave them behind, which I think will be really neat. And I imagine that is because the combat so far at least is looking to be very fast-paced. Everything is very quick, and trying to give yourself a little breathing room goes a long way. But seeing how I'm usually a dodge person myself in these types of games, that's felt pretty natural to me at least. So, to pull all that together into a general first impressions, I would say I'm having a lot of fun with it so far. The main thing it's trying to do, of course, the combat is very fluid, fun, you have a ton of control over your character, it feels great to move around and utilize these combos, and I would say that's the most important part. So far, technical issues have not really been an issue for me personally, but we'll save that for the full review, see if I encounter anything else. So I think as far as that review goes, as long as the game continues to provide meaningful progression along the way, while at the same time not becoming stale or extremely linear in the case of like armor progression, for instance, then I think this might very well wind up being great. Now, in terms of how long that review is going to take, I'm not really sure. I've seen some chatter about there being some really hidden stuff, but now that it's out in the wild, that stuff usually doesn't stay hidden for long, so we'll wind up seeing what it takes to 100% this one. But all in all, so far, it's a lot of fun. Looking forward to 100%ing this one and bringing you a comprehensive review, which hopefully won't take too long, but we'll see. That is going to do it for this particular video, though. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Stick around for the review, hopefully. But otherwise, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing